welcome to another episode of Vinny Presents. Today we have brand builder, serial entrepreneur, and motivational speaker. We have Jen Groover. Jen, welcome. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Happy to be here.
Thank you very much. I know we had a bit of a scheduling conflict on my part, but thanks for your patience and being a wonderful person and now being our guest. So let's tell our guest a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. As you mentioned, I'm a serial entrepreneur. Um, when my kids were little, they actually thought I made cereal. I didn't realize it. I heard my daughters, they were in first grade and they had to go to school and talk about what their parents did. And one was fighting with the other, saying, no, she makes handbags. And the other one's like, no, she makes purses. And I mean, the other one was like, no, she makes cereal. And I was like, wait, who said I made cereal? And they're like, you're a serial entrepreneur. So that was funny. But I've been an entrepreneur since 1995. I joke way before it was cool. And entrepreneurship was thought to be really scary and risky, where now it's very much seen to be cool and the hip thing to do. So my first foray was in the fitness industry, and that was when the fitness industry was brand new and a little infancy stages of a movement that today, when you say that to young kids, they're like, wait, what? I'm like, yeah, we had to actually convince people to stop smoking. We had to convince people to like work out. We had to convince people to eat healthier. So I've watched that movement come very far. And then just kept building and growing in different industries. Got some book deals along the way, thousands of speaking engagements underneath my belt, and keep creating, evolving, and pivoting as the industries change and the world changes.
Well, speaking of speaking engagements, one that I was watching, you said a line that really motivated me, and it's common sense, but sometimes you forget about it. Is fear is holding back your potential, and that definitely struck a chord with me because growing up, I'm not sure if it was instilled on me, but I was always very fearful of taking risks, and I think I was from a very kind of conservative background family, like take the safe route all the time. I was always afraid to step out of my shell.
Yeah. So, you know, my mom really was a rebel in many ways. She ran campaigns for politicians way before women were really involved in politics. She had a TV show that she had forced me on air to. She made me take forensics, is what it was called back then, but speaking, public speaking gigs as a kid. There were these competitions and things at the Granite Run Mall in Delaware County, and I hated it. I hated feeling vulnerable. I hated feeling where you're exposed, that other kids would make fun of you. But my mom would always say, you have to learn to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, because that's the growth is. That's where you can become who you're meant to be. That's where potential comes from. And so eventually you get to that place when you do continue to face your fears, and when you do put yourself out there, that at this stage of life, being comfortable is really uncomfortable. That complacency makes me very uncomfortable. So um, I think it's a muscle that we have to develop over time and force ourselves through some uncomfortable situations to develop that muscle and the resiliency around it and the confidence around it. But um, I've done the same for my kids. They're 20-year-old twin girls, where I would force them to be uncomfortable, and still do. And they get aggravated sometimes about it. But as they get older, they're becoming more aware of what the purpose of it all is.
That's great, and you know what? That's very difficult as a child because I have three little ones and they struggle too. My oldest one, she, I always have to reinstill and encourage her to not be so shy, and it's very critical of herself. So it's important I think your mom did a great job in instilling that in you at an early age.
Yeah, she was a wealth of thoughts and ideas and strong opinions. I always say she was a sassy, mouthy Brooklyn, New York Italian. And Vince Lombardi was my grandfather's best friend. So he was like an uncle to my mom. And I'm sure you know many of the Vince Lombardi quotes that are quoted a million times that he, I believe, instilled a lot of the strong thought processes that she had to instill in me. That, again, when I was a kid, I didn't love either. But as I became an adult, I really value the programming, because that's really what it is, the programming that she gave me. Another one that was a big one that a lot of people find very valuable is we weren't allowed to complain about anything unless we were backing it up with a solution. So my mom would say, you have no rights to a complaint unless you also come to me with the solution to the complaint, or at least options of a solution. And I tell parents that is one of the best ways to hardwire your kids to be a solution driven person. So as they get older, they're not staying focused on the problems and the complaints, where a lot of people get stuck and toxic and don't expand from there. But instead, you say, okay, here's a problem. All right, now what's the solution? And you innovate, and you're really training your brain to be an innovator and a creator and entrepreneur, because you're challenging your brain to constantly seek a solution versus stay in the complaint, which most people do.
Well, it sounds like your mother really was a rebel, because most Italian mothers enable their kids until they're married and beyond. You know, living in a basement that we see so many times.
Well, I will tell
That's
you
not a
this.
knock, by the way.
No, I know, but I'll tell you this. My brother, who is only 11 months older than me, was raised very differently than me. So I
Bingo.
agree with you. Understand. I agree with what you're saying. Quite honestly, I didn't want to be controlled. I was very resistant to my mom in many ways, like in that sense. Um, we had two alpha personalities. I was very independent, and I would get mad at her for trying to be overbearing or over function for me. And I would actually, as a kid, say, I'd rather fail on my own accord than have you help me. And so my brother was totally okay with all of her help and enabling. I just, I didn't like it. I really was fiercely independent, a little Aries in me.
That's great. Listen, that's it's an important thing. I mean, part of your growth, and I think most I witnessed it in my own children, that I feel like you're born with a certain sort of you know, condition, drive, or mental frame where you're going to end up being a certain way or another. It's just kind of like part of you. And then as you get older, as you said, you get conditioned with your environmental influences and different people in your life and things that happen. But you're born, I think you are born a certain way. You know, some things will come out easier than others.
Yes. So the nature versus nurture conversation, I really do love, because we are predisposed to certain characteristics of our personalities, and then other ones we can morph and change based on who's programming us as a kid and who's um, really conditioning our beliefs and values. But then as we get older, we can always continue to adapt and change if we so desire.
And I'm sure you would agree. I mean, it seems like every decade you kind of tweak things change, you start to change your perspective on things. I certainly have, and I've kind of accepted some of the good things I grew up with, and I've learned to slowly delineate or get rid of some of the things that I don't agree with or that don't make sense anymore for this day and age. But with that, it's funny you said that years ago you would have to convince people to be healthy, stop smoking. Now, you thank God you're seeing a lot less of that. You know, I remember growing up and my dad smoking, and we would have to paint our walls every 3 years because they were yellow.
Yes. Well, my mom would smoke with the windows up in the car, and I would get to my school and my hair would smell like smoke and my clothes would smell like smoke. I'd get so mad at her because I'd go into into school smelling like a smoke puff. And I'd be like, Mom, all the kids are saying you smell like smoke. Like, can we at least roll the windows down? But back then it was, a lot more normal now and not be normal at all to walk into school smelling like smoke as a little child. But yeah, she was a 2-pack a day marble girl.
Yeah, my dad was actually a 2-pack marble person himself. God rest his soul. But and which didn't help his health. But anyway,
No.
it's now we're touching with the entrepreneurship. Take us through the journey. What led you to become a public speaker and do what you do?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, my first business was in the fitness industry. It was in Wilmington, Delaware. I was a national level fitness competitor, and as a national level fitness competitor, we were on tour all the time, at these big conferences as master trainers, teaching people about steps and slides and new fitness trends. And so, as I mentioned, when I was a kid, my mom would make me do these forensic competitions and be on these speaking platforms, and I hated it so much. And I never set out to be a speaker because of that. But here I found myself on these stages, so passionate about what I was talking about that I didn't see myself as a speaker at that point. I was just part of this movement and excited and teaching people how to use this new equipment and really educating. And so my degree is also in psychology and education. And as I went further into the fitness industry, I kept seeing patterns. Like, why are the same people always coming into the gym so dedicated on Monday, but by like Thursday, they've fallen off the wagon? Or every January they come in, this is their year, and by February they fall off the wagon. What is it in them versus the people that are always rigid and regimented? And how do you help the people that aren't naturally rigid and regimented get to a better space than the default personality? And the more I started to explore the psychology of well-being, the more I wanted to spread that word and the understanding of, your beliefs are what create your behaviors, which then create your outcomes. So most people in this gym example are trying to force themselves with willpower to get to this outcome over here while they're over there by not changing their beliefs, but just changing their behaviors. And once I realized you can't change your behavior sustainably without changing your beliefs, transforming who you are, you'll never have a different outcome. So the more I learned about this and could apply it not just to physical well-being, but mental and emotional well-being and to business, the more I wanted to get on stage and have that megaphone and a voice and help people to get out of their own way, quite frankly, and be able to maximize their potential and be able to live better lives. And so that mission of becoming a speaker was not something I as a kid ever set out to do. But when I realized when you're standing on that stage and you have an audience, you have the power of influence, and you can use it for good or not good. And for me, I wanted to utilize it in a way that helped people have better lives. And that was my driving desire and the thing that fuels my soul to this day, 25 plus years later, as a speaker.
And how was it? How did you become an actual speaker? What was that? What made you say, you know what, I'm going to start making phone calls and I'm going to book myself? Like, how was that for someone who's interested in being a speaker? How did you do it?
So I can't say it was a traditional path. As I mentioned, in that fitness world, I was on these stages. So people would call me, somebody would hear me in the audience and say, hey, my company's hiring a speaker. I would love for you to come and speak. And so my whole career, fortunately, I'm blessed, Vinny, has been word of mouth, one speaking engagement leading to another speaking engagement. And obviously positioning as social media started to happen. But I was in the media, younger in my career. So that would, the visibility of being on TV shows all the time would put you out there. And then they would hear that I was a speaker, and another, event planner would hear it and say, oh, she's a speaker. We should invite her to our speaking engagement. So I was never really, and still at this point in my career, knocking on doors to have those opportunities. Again, I'm blessed. It's been a snowball effect. And so when someone is just starting, I say get out there and get in front of audiences, and you might have to do it for free for the first bit of time, but it's getting that exposure and getting at least one person in the audience to love you, to then create that referral type of model or snowball effect, as I call it, to really open the floodgates, posting content on social, getting people to see what your philosophies are and your ability to be articulate and your ability to engage is. And that's really, I mean, now that it's one of the easiest times. What social media has given, the platform that social media has given business owners and speakers is enormous compared to what existed 10 years ago when it was not the way it is today. So it's really leveraging your exposure in a correct and strategic way that will allow you to build your business and your personal brand.
Yeah, two key words there: positioning and leveraging. Those are very important. And social media, no doubt about it. I say it almost every program. It's amazing what can be done now versus, like you said, 10 years ago. You have literally everything and everyone at your fingertips potentially. And that for me, I know I've grown my social media from basically nothing. I remember I started Instagram the very last day of 2022. So we could say 2023. So in a year, and I gained a pretty nice audience, which they're wonderful. And we started doing this podcast, and it was all incremental, little by little by little every day, and tweaking and seeing what works and adjusting. So I can speak for myself and say that I think anyone out there that's listening that has a drive to want to do something in any avenue, just apply yourself and use plenty of social media.
Consistency is key, and authenticity, right? Really being true to who you are and how you want to live your life. And maybe because I'm a little bit more old school and social media didn't exist when we were younger, thank goodness. But there's still an autonomy that I value for my life. But then I have colleagues who, will video themselves all day, every day, where they're walking around New York City and they're on an airplane, and that's authentic to them, right? So I always tell people, when you're trying to create the strategy, you've got to be true to who you are and the quality of a life that you want as well. And people see that if you're trying to force who you are versus being authentic to who you are, they feel that, and that is what will make them engage with you or not.
So, what do you think the future looks like in terms of entrepreneurship, the ability to achieve your dreams, kind of break out of that 9 to 5 sort of hamster wheels? I say, what's the future looking like from your perspective?
So it's so funny because I never had a 9 to 5, right? So even back in the day, like I said before, it was cool. I would hear that and I would think that would make me want to like get sick. Like it felt like prison to me, that thought process of, working really hard to make somebody else really rich. And that's part of my mindset of why I became an entrepreneur. I would think to myself, if I'm going to work 100% or 1,000% at something, I'm going to do it for myself, even though in many ways it can be harder, especially when you're getting started. I'd rather do it for me and that satisfaction than somebody else. But just like with social media and building your brand and building your business, it is a lot easier to become an entrepreneur today than ever before. You just need a phone, really, and you can be an entrepreneur. There's so many apps and platforms and tools to help scale businesses quickly as an entrepreneur. My daughters, as I mentioned, they're 20, they're in college right now. One is in Arizona State, the other one's at College of Charleston. Great cities. They love being able to explore the world. And I said, just the other day, you need to think about how you're going to become a laptop entrepreneur so that you can, once you graduate, be anywhere in the world and still be making money and still have the freedom to navigate and move around, which we didn't have the capabilities of doing when we were that age. And so the future is definitely mobile. The future is for retail, direct to consumer. I mean, it's really sad to say that we're seeing those brick and mortar retail brands that we grew up with kind of just all falling away pretty quickly right now. And that will continue on its pace. Um, I see our Amazon brands skyrocketing. I see our direct to consumer sales skyrocketing. And many brands aren't looking to do that traditional, the way back in the day to get a deal with Ulta or a deal with Macy's or a deal with any of those brands was like, I made it. And now it's nice, but they're more concerned about what influencers are going to promote their brand for them and who's running their Amazon accounts so that they're cranking sales while they're sleeping. So retail is really changing, but it's opened up, it's leveled the playing field. Before, the buyers were the gatekeepers, and no longer are they. So that's what's really powerful. And technology, AI, if you're not figuring out how to utilize AI to make your life easier, you're missing the boat. And it's changing rapidly. So I tell every entrepreneur right now, you should be taking online courses on AI. Google is offering them like crazy right now. Even if you're not taking an intense course, even entry level, how can AI improve the world? That is what is needed in the future of business and entrepreneurship.
Jen, I agree. I mean, I'm studying AI myself, and I'm seeing a lot of the techniques that I can use, and just in my podcast here, as far as utilizing it to get better clips and contents and just maneuverability within my own life. But and it is true. I seen a lot of places, especially in Philly, South Jersey, a lot of places shuttered. Of course, COVID was the big, it shut down a lot of places. Although at first you get a little sad about it, but then you realize that this is the natural evolution of things.
Yeah,
And let's face it, I don't even, I mean, I'm ashamed to admit it, but I really don't go to the grocery store as much. A lot of the stuff I get delivered. Why? Well, it's a few bucks more, but the conveniency of it, and we all want to live a lot less stressful lives. So,
right.
um, I'm sure our parents, grandparents, great grandparents would be ashamed of us. But no, I mean, we have to go with the tide of if your life's more simple and you're able to utilize your time in a more valuable way, you should. So I'm
Absolutely.
okay with the changes.
Yeah. The only time I really feel the need to go to the grocery store is I still like to pick out my own fruits and vegetables. Like I really want to like touch them. Very particular about my avocado. And I still write things on with pen and paper.
I agree. I do. I enjoy those parts of it. You're right. That I agree on. Well,
Yes.
where can everybody find you?
So I'm very active on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn. It's my name, Jen Groover. And so I post a lot of content and resources and kind of my world travels as well, enjoying life. So anyone can find me there and reach out to me as well.
All right, great. Any last minute tips for that beginning entrepreneur? Anything besides the AI tip, which I think is crucial, but any other like little tips or nuggets of wisdom you would like to share?
The biggest thing is have more fear of regret than you have a failure. Failure is just part of the process on the journey to success. No big win happens without some bumps in the road first. And it's only a failure when you give up. It's opportunity to learn and grow when you recognize it for that. So navigate life having more fear of regret than failure, face those opportunities head on as learning curves. And again, failure only happens when you give up.
Some great quotes that I think even Vince Lombardi himself would appreciate.
Thank you. I
Our,
appreciate it.
our guest has been Jen Groover. Please make sure if you haven't, please subscribe to my channel and make sure you're following Jen. I'm going to have a list of all your links in our description box. I encourage all my followers, please make sure you're following her. She's wonderful. This is just a taste of what she does, and I hope you will follow her. And Jen, what can I say but thank you? And I really enjoyed this. This was a great discussion.
Thank you. Likewise. Have a great day.
We'll catch up soon, and we'll see you next time, guys.
Absolutely. Take care.
Yeah.